A werewolf shifter romance. Alara Ashwood had survived 35 winters in the Wraith Marches, 5 of them alone. She had learned that survival meant routine. Wake before dawn, check the perimeter, tend the herb garden, speak to no one. The 12 white wolves changed everything. She woke that morning to silence, which was the first warning. The Wraith Marches were never silent. Even in deep winter the forest spoke, wind through pine branches, distant calls of hunting owls, the careful footfalls of deer navigating frozen ground. But this morning nothing. Alara pushed herself upright in bed, her hand instinctively reaching for the hunting knife she kept beneath her pillow. 35 years of life, 8 of them as a combat medic in the Rogue Wars, had taught her that unnatural silence meant danger. She dressed quickly in the pre-dawn darkness. Wool pants, leather boots worn soft with age, a thick sweater that had belonged to her husband before the wars took him. Her fingers moved through the familiar motions while her mind catalogued threats. Rogues, bandits, corrupted shifters driven mad by dark magic. The possibility that she was 20 weeks pregnant and hiding it from the world added weight to every breath. Alara crossed to the window and eased the shutter open just wide enough to see outside. The first pale light of dawn painted the clearing in shades of gray and silver, and there, arranged in a formation she recognized immediately, sat 12 massive white wolves. Her breath caught in her throat. They were positioned in a perfect defensive perimeter, not a random circle, but a military formation. Fire team organization. 3 wolves at each cardinal point, overlapping fields of vision, no blind spots. The kind of setup she had seen deployed by elite units during the wars. The leader sat directly before her door, larger than the others, with a presence that commanded attention even in stillness. Its fur was pure white, almost luminous in the gathering dawn, but it was the eyes that stopped her cold. Golden eyes, brilliant, intelligent, and watching her cabin with an intensity that felt almost human. Alara counted them again. 12, a full squad. The number meant something, though she could not quite place what. Her hands tightened on the window frame as she studied their positioning. Each wolf sat utterly still, but their ears swiveled constantly, tracking sounds she could not hear. Their tails lay flat, a posture that suggested discipline rather than aggression. These were not ordinary wolves. She had treated enough shifter wounds during her military service to recognize the signs. Size, for one. These creatures were easily twice the mass of natural wolves, but it was their behavior that confirmed it. Wild wolves did not arrange themselves in tactical formations. Wild wolves did not maintain perfect stillness for observation. These were shifters, and shifters maintaining wolf form this long, this deliberately, meant one of 2 things. Either they could not shift back, or they chose not to. Alara closed the shutter and leaned against the rough wooden wall, her mind racing through possibilities. Shifters in the Wraith Marches were rare but not unheard of. Most avoided the borderlands, preferring the safety of pack territories deeper in Lunaria Kingdom. Those who came here were usually rogues, driven out by their packs, dangerous and unpredictable. But these wolves showed none of the signs of rogue behavior. No aggression, no chaotic movement, just patient, organized vigilance. The baby kicked, a flutter so faint she might have imagined it. Alara placed a hand over her belly, still concealed beneath loose clothing, though the swell was becoming harder to hide. 20 weeks along, courtesy of one night of forgetting her grief with a stranger in town. A dark-haired man with golden eyes who had said his name was irrelevant, that he was just passing through, that duty would call him away at dawn. He had left before the sun rose, and she had tried to forget him. Until 7 weeks ago, when the nausea started and the truth became unavoidable. Now 12 wolves sat outside her door, and she could not shake the feeling that they had not come for her. They had come for the child. Alara forced herself to breathe slowly, to think like the soldier she had been, rather than the frightened woman she felt like now. If they meant to harm her, they would have attacked already. The cabin had no defenses that could stop 12 shifters if they wanted entry. She would have woken to teeth and claws, not silent vigil. So they were protecting something, or someone. She needed supplies. Firewood, water from the stream, herbs from the drying racks outside. She could not stay barricaded in her cabin forever, afraid of wolves that had made no hostile move. Alara checked her knife, then added a second blade to her belt. She pulled on her heavy cloak and wrapped a scarf around her throat against the morning cold. Her hand hovered over the old service rifle mounted above the door, a relic from her army days. But bringing a weapon would signal distrust, possibly provoke the very violence she hoped to avoid. She left the rifle and opened the door instead. The golden-eyed wolf rose the instant her door moved. The others remained seated, but their attention shifted to her with unnerving synchronization. 12 pairs of eyes, watching, waiting. Alara stepped out onto the small porch, her boots creaking on the frozen wood. The wolf before her door was even more impressive up close. It stood nearly as tall as her waist at the shoulder, its massive frame packed with muscle beneath that pristine white fur. Scars marked its hide, a long slash across the left shoulder, smaller marks along the muzzle. These were the scars of a warrior, not a hunter. She met those golden eyes and felt something shift in her chest. Recognition, though that made no sense. She had never seen this wolf before. Had she? The stranger in town had golden eyes, but half the shifters in the kingdom probably had golden eyes. It meant nothing. Alara took a careful step down from the porch. The wolf did not move, but its ears swiveled forward, tracking her. She could see the intelligence there, the calculation. This was not an animal driven by instinct. This was someone thinking, planning, deciding. She walked toward the woodpile at the side of her cabin, moving slowly, keeping her hands visible. The wolves tracked her progress but made no move to stop her. When she bent to gather wood, the golden-eyed wolf shifted position slightly, maintaining line of sight while giving her space. Not aggressive, protective. Alara loaded her arms with firewood and returned to the cabin. The wolves remained in formation, though she noticed the leader had repositioned to keep himself between her and the forest edge, as if guarding against threats that might emerge from the trees. She made 3 more trips. Firewood, water bucket from the stream, which she found already filled and sitting beside her door, water sloshing slightly as though recently placed there. Someone had fetched water for her. Herbs from the drying racks, which she gathered while the wolves watched with what almost seemed like approval. On her final trip inside, Alara paused in the doorway and looked back at the golden-eyed wolf. It sat at attention now, regal despite the scars, patient despite the cold. Words tumbled out before she could stop them. "You remind me of soldiers I knew, the good ones, the ones who understood that strength means protecting, not dominating." The wolf's ears flicked forward. Its tail moved once, a small sweep against the frozen ground, almost like acknowledgement. Alara retreated inside and barred the door, her heart pounding. She was talking to wolves. She was 3 months pregnant, alone in the borderlands, and talking to wolves as if they might understand. But the truth was, she suspected they did. The day passed in uneasy routine. Alara tended her cabin, sorted herbs, ground medicines for the few villagers brave enough to visit her for healing. Through the window, she watched the wolves. They rotated positions every few hours with the precision of a changing guard. 3 would rise and move to different points, while 3 others took their places. The rotation maintained constant coverage with no gaps, no confusion. Military discipline, no doubt about it now. As afternoon shadows lengthened, Alara found herself talking aloud again, her voice carrying through the cabin walls. "I was a combat medic, 3rd Medical Battalion, Rogue Wars. We held Hill 347 for 6 days while supplies ran low and casualties mounted. By day 3, we were out of morphine. You learn to prioritize when resources disappear. Who can be saved, who cannot, who gets comfort and who gets honesty." She paused, grinding dried feverfew into powder, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. "We had a saying, medics treat bodies. Good medics treat soldiers. The body is just meat and bone. The soldier is the person inside who needs to know they are not dying alone, that their sacrifice means something, that someone will remember." Through the window, she saw the golden-eyed wolf turn its massive head toward her cabin. Listening. She was certain it was listening. The strangest part was how natural it felt to speak these things aloud. She had not talked about the wars in years. Her husband had been there too, had understood without words. After he died, there had been no one left who knew that version of her. The version that could stabilize a sucking chest wound while mortars fell. The version that sang lullabies to dying boys far from home. The version that had learned to keep going when everything inside screamed to break. Dusk brought the first test. Alara was stirring soup on her small stove when the howls started. Not the wolves outside her door. These came from deeper in the forest, high and ragged with hunger and madness. rogue pack, 6, maybe 7 individuals, driven feral by isolation or corruption. She moved to the window in time to see the rogues burst from the tree line. They were smaller than her guardians, their fur matted and filthy, eyes gleaming with mindless aggression. They charged the cabin in a chaotic rush, no coordination, no strategy, pure animal fury. The 12 white wolves rose as one. What followed was a masterclass in tactical combat. The rogues hit the perimeter expecting resistance. What they got was a controlled withdrawal. The white wolves fell back 3 steps, drawing the rogues forward into a kill zone. Then the flanking elements moved. 3 wolves from each side swept in at angles, cutting off retreat. The rogues suddenly found themselves surrounded, their chaotic charge transformed into a trap. Alara pressed close to the window, her medic's eye tracking the flow of battle. The white wolves fought with restraint despite their obvious advantage. They disabled rather than killed when possible. A precise bite to the leg that crippled without severing major arteries. A body slam that broke ribs but left the spine intact. They were administering violence with surgical precision. The golden-eyed wolf fought at the center, larger and faster than his companions. He moved like water, flowing around attacks, responding with minimal force calibrated perfectly to each threat. A rogue lunged for his throat. He sidestepped, caught its neck in his jaws, and applied just enough pressure to force submission without crushing. When the rogue went limp in surrender, he released it and moved to the next threat. This was not rage, this was discipline. Within minutes, the fight ended. 2 rogues dead, their injuries too severe to survive. 4 disabled and limping. They retreated into the forest, beaten but alive. The white wolves did not pursue. They returned to their positions, reformed their perimeter, and resumed their vigil. The golden-eyed wolf lifted his head and released a howl that shook the night air. It was not a sound of triumph. It was a warning, a declaration. This territory is defended. Test us again at your peril. The other wolves joined in, their voices rising in layered harmony. Alara felt the sound in her chest, resonating through bone and blood. Some primal part of her, the Omega wolf she rarely acknowledged, responded to that call. Safety, strength, pack. She found herself with one hand pressed to the window, the other to her belly where new life grew. The wolves fell silent and settled back into position, but the golden-eyed one turned to look directly at her window. Their eyes met through the glass, golden to green, wolf to woman. And Alara felt something pass between them that had no name. Understanding, perhaps, or recognition of a bond forming whether she willed it or not. She whispered to the empty cabin, "Who are you?" The wolf held her gaze a moment longer, then turned back to face the forest. Vigilant, patient, unmovable. Alara did not sleep well that night. 3 days passed, then a week. The wolves remained. Alara fell into rhythm with their presence. She woke each dawn to find them positioned exactly as the night before, though she knew they rotated watch throughout the darkness. She went about her tasks while they kept their vigil, and she talked, more each day, as if the act of speaking aloud to attentive listeners eased something tight in her chest. She told them about her husband Matthias, who had been an engineer before the wars made him a soldier. How he could calculate load-bearing tolerances in his head while building field fortifications. How he had died not from enemy action but from infection. A simple wound turned septic because supplies ran out and antibiotics never arrived. She told them about her parents, also healers, who had died when she was 30. An attack blamed on rogues, though the details never quite made sense. Too organized, too deliberate. She told them about choosing isolation in the Wraith marches because grief made crowds unbearable. How the pitying looks and careful words of former comrades felt worse than loneliness. The wolves listened. She was certain they listened. On the 8th day, the golden-eyed wolf brought her a gift. Alara emerged at dawn to find a deer carcass hanging from the tree where she usually stored tools. It had been field-dressed with expert precision, entrails removed, cavity clean. The kind of work that required hands, not paws. She looked at the wolf sitting before her door. He watched her with those golden eyes, waiting for her reaction. "You hunted this, dressed it, hung it for me." His tail swept once against the ground. Yes. The realization hit her like cold water. These wolves were not just intelligent, they were conscious, fully aware, trapped in animal form but retaining human minds. The implications staggered her. "How long have you been like this?" The wolf could not answer, but something in his posture spoke of exhaustion that went beyond the physical. This was not a temporary shift. This was imprisonment. Alara felt the baby move inside her, stronger now, 14 weeks along. The nausea had faded, replaced by the strange awareness of another life sharing her body. She placed a hand over her belly and saw the golden-eyed wolf track the movement. His entire body went still, a different kind of stillness than before. This was shock, realization, as if something just clicked into place in his mind. "You did not know," Alara said softly, "about the baby. You have been protecting me, but you did not know why until now." The wolf rose slowly, then sat again, as if his legs would not quite hold him. His eyes never left her belly. She could see him processing, connecting pieces. Then he threw back his head and howled. Not a warning this time, a summons. Within minutes, another wolf appeared, smaller, with ice-blue eyes and a distinctive scar across her muzzle. She approached the golden-eyed wolf and they touched noses briefly, communicating in ways Alara could not interpret. Then the blue-eyed wolf turned and sprinted into the forest at full speed. Gone for help, Alara realized. But what kind of help, and why now? 2 hours later, the blue-eyed wolf returned, and she was not alone. An old man rode on her back, clinging to her fur with the ease of long practice. He was somewhere past 60, with silver hair pulled back in a neat tail and a beard trimmed close to his weathered face. He wore travel-stained robes and carried a healer's satchel that Alara recognized immediately. Her breath left her in a rush, Aldrich. The old man slid from the wolf's back and approached with the careful step of someone who had seen too much to be surprised by anything. His blue eyes, sharp despite his age, swept over the cabin, the wolves, and finally settled on Alara. "You have been hiding from the world, child, but it seems the world found you anyway." "Aldrich, I thought you retired to the capital." "I did, until my old friend here convinced me I was needed elsewhere." He gestured to the blue-eyed wolf, who had settled beside the golden-eyed one. They sat together like old comrades, which Alara supposed they were. Aldrich had been the chief surgeon of the Royal Army during the Rogue Wars. He had trained Alara, had fought beside her husband, had been at Matthias's bedside when infection took him. After the wars, he had disappeared into royal service, and Alara had not seen him in 5 years. Now he stood in her clearing, summoned by wolves. "May I examine you?" Aldrich's voice was gentle, professional. "I understand congratulations are in order, or condolences. I am never quite sure which to offer for unplanned pregnancies." Despite everything, Alara almost smiled. She gestured him inside, acutely aware of 12 wolves watching her invite a stranger into her home. But they made no move to stop Aldrich. If anything, they seemed to relax slightly, as if his presence eased some burden. Inside the cabin, Aldrich worked with the efficient calm of a man who had treated thousands of patients. He checked her pulse, examined her eyes and tongue, pressed careful hands to her abdomen. When he placed his palm over the small swell of her belly, his expression shifted to something like awe. "Extraordinary. This child carries a power signature I have rarely encountered. Alpha bloodline, certainly. Very high alpha. But there is something else. Something in you that is waking in response." "What do you mean?" Aldrich settled onto the chair across from her, his old hands folding together. "How much do you know about your parents' true work, Alara?" "They were healers, like me. They were moon-born healers, very different from ordinary practitioners. Your bloodline carries the blessing of the moon goddess herself, rare, powerful, and dangerous to those who fear what they cannot control." The room felt too small suddenly. Alara heard her own breathing too fast. "I am just a medic. I patch wounds and mix herbs. There is nothing special about me." "Because your parents bound your abilities when you were 6 years old, to protect you." Aldrich's voice carried weight beyond words. Moonborn healers were targeted during the wars, not by the rogues, but by elements within our own forces, those who saw power as a threat to be eliminated. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because pregnancy with a high alpha child is breaking those bindings. Your power is waking, and the wolves outside your door know it." He leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. "Child, I need you to understand something. Your parents did not die in a random rogue attack. They were assassinated." The words hit like a physical blow. Alara gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. "No, the report said rogues. Everyone said rogues. Everyone was wrong. or lied. Aldrich's face was grave. Dorian and Lyria were investigating corruption in the royal court, dark magic being used to create controllable weapons, corrupted shifters bound to a master's will. They discovered proof, planned to bring it before the king. They died 3 days before their scheduled testimony. The room spun. Alara closed her eyes, tried to anchor herself in breath and heartbeat. 5 years. She had lived with the false comfort of believing her parents' deaths were meaningless tragedy, random violence in a violent time. Now Aldrich was telling her they died as heroes, and someone had killed them for it. Who? The word came out as a growl. I do not know. Not with certainty, but I have suspicions. And so did King Heir Blackthorn, which is why he disappeared 20 weeks ago. Aldrich gestured toward the door, toward the wolves beyond. That is not a random pack keeping vigil, Alara. Those are the Shadow Guard, the king's personal elite. They only deploy for one reason: royal blood. The implication hung in the air between them. Alara looked down at her belly, at the child growing there. Royal blood. The stranger in town with golden eyes who said his name did not matter. You're saying the father is the king. I am saying the timeline matches. King Heir left the capital 23 weeks ago, traveling alone in disguise. He was gone for 3 days. He returned, announced to the council his intention to claim a mate, and that night someone cursed him. Cursed? Aldrich nodded. Transformed to wolf form, unable to shift back, unable to speak. Ancient magic, forbidden for centuries. It requires a caster of immense power and absolute conviction. Someone who believed the king claiming you as mate posed a threat worth breaking every law to prevent. Alara stood abruptly, pacing the small cabin. This is insane. I am a widow living in the borderlands. Why would anyone care if the king wanted me? Even if it is true, which I still doubt, you are moonborn. Your child will carry both your healing power and the king's alpha dominance. That combination has not existed in 3 generations. Some would see it as salvation, others as catastrophe. Aldrich's voice was gentle but unyielding. The king came to you seeking normalcy. 1 night away from duty and politics. He found his true mate instead. And someone decided that bond could not be allowed to form. The golden-eyed wolf, the way he watched her, the protectiveness, the shock when he saw her pregnant belly. Alara moved to the window. The wolf sat where he always did, vigilant despite the cold. As if sensing her gaze, he turned his massive head toward the cabin. Golden eyes met hers through the glass. She saw him differently now. Not just a wolf, a man trapped inside, a king who had found his mate and lost his voice in a single night, who had spent 20 weeks in forced silence, unable to explain, unable to claim what fate had given him. How do we break the curse? I am researching, but curses of this magnitude require specific conditions to break, usually 3 tests or trials that prove the bond is true. He hesitated. There is danger, Alara. Whoever did this is still active, still powerful. They sent those corrupted rogues 3 days ago to test your defenses. They will try again. Let them. She was surprised by the cold certainty in her own voice. I survived 6 years of war. I can survive this. Aldrich smiled, sad and proud at once. Your mother said almost those exact words the day before she died. Be careful, child. Courage is necessary but not sufficient. He left as the sun reached its peak, riding away on the blue-eyed wolf with promises to return with more information. Alara watched them disappear into the trees, then turned to face the golden-eyed wolf still keeping watch. She walked out to him slowly. This time, when she approached, he did not rise. He sat, waiting, as if understanding she needed to close the distance herself. Alara knelt in the frozen dirt before him, eye to eye. I do not know if this is real. If you are really Heir Blackthorn, if the child I carry is really heir to the kingdom. But I know you have been protecting me, and I know you understand everything I say. She reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand on his massive head. His fur was soft and warm despite the cold. I was married once, to a good man. He died, and I thought I would never feel safe with anyone again. But these past weeks, knowing you were here, even though we never spoke, even though you could not explain, I felt safer than I have in 8 years. The wolf closed his golden eyes and leaned into her touch. She felt something then, not thought, not words, but emotion bleeding through contact, devotion, frustration, desperate longing to communicate beyond these crude limits. "We will figure this out." She did not know when she had decided this, but the words felt true. "I am a healer. That is what we do. We fix what is broken, even if it takes time, even if it is dangerous." The wolf opened his eyes and held her gaze. In that look, she saw agreement, partnership, the beginning of something that had no name yet but felt inevitable as sunrise. A week passed, then 2. Alara settled into a new normal. She woke each morning to 12 white wolves in formation. She talked to them while she worked, sharing stories from the wars, from her childhood, from the years of solitude. She began to distinguish individuals beyond the golden-eyed leader and the blue-eyed female who had fetched Aldrich. There was a scarred male with darker markings who always took point position during rotations. He moved like a scout, checking terrain before signaling all clear. Another female, smaller and faster, who seemed to specialize in perimeter running. She would circle the clearing at irregular intervals, checking for signs of intrusion. They were a unit, a pack bound not by blood, but by shared service. And slowly, Alara began to feel herself becoming part of that unit, even though she remained human and they remained wolves. The baby grew. At 16 weeks, her belly rounded enough that she could no longer hide it beneath loose tunics. The wolves noticed. Their protectiveness increased. They no longer allowed her to walk even to the stream alone. One would accompany her, maintaining watchful distance. It was the golden-eyed wolf who usually took that duty. He would walk beside her, close enough to intervene if needed, but far enough to give her space. She found herself talking to him more than the others, as if some instinct recognized the bond that might or might not exist between them. "I married at 27, she told him one afternoon while collecting water. The bucket was heavy, and he had positioned himself so she could lean against his shoulder for balance if needed. Matthias was steady, kind, the sort of man who remembered small things and never raised his voice in anger. We had 6 good years before the war, 2 years of deployment where we barely saw each other, 1 year of thinking we might survive. Then he died from infection in my arms." She paused, surprised by tears. "I blamed myself. I was a medic. I should have saved him. But there was no medicine, no supplies, just watching someone I loved slip away while I could do nothing." The wolf made a low sound, not quite a whine, but something mournful. She felt his bulk press gently against her leg. Comfort without words. "After he died, I could not stay in the places we had been together. Every street reminded me. Every face that showed pity made it worse. So I came here, to the edge of everything, where I could grieve without audience." She looked down at the wolf. "I thought I would die alone out here, childless, unmourned, and I was fine with that." His golden eyes watched her, impossibly expressive. "Then I met a stranger in town, just one night. He asked nothing from me, offered nothing but presents. We did not speak of futures or promises. It was just human connection after years of isolation. I did not even learn his name." She laughed, bitter. "Now Aldrich tells me he was a king in disguise, that I am carrying royalty. It's absurd." The wolf held very still. She could feel him listening with every fiber of his being. "But if it is true," Alara continued slowly, "if you are him, then I need you to know something. I am not some young girl who believes in destiny and fate. I am 35 years old, a veteran, a widow. I have been broken and put myself back together more times than I can count. If this child binds us, it will not be because magic says so. It will be because we choose it, because we build something worth choosing." She knelt in the dirt beside him, one hand on his scarred shoulder. "If you are in there, Cale Blackthorn, if you can hear me, then know this. I will help break this curse. Not because you are a king, because you have spent 17 days protecting a woman you barely know, because you could have sent others and stayed safe in the capital, but you came yourself. That is the kind of man worth fighting for, king or commoner." The wolf leaned his massive head against her shoulder. She wrapped both arms around his neck and held on, feeling his warmth, his solidity. They stayed that way for a long moment, woman and wolf, bound by something neither could name but both recognized. When she finally pulled back, she saw wetness around his eyes. Wolves could not cry, but shifters trapped in wolf form could still feel everything humans felt. And this one, she realized with sudden clarity, had been alone in his cursed form, just as she had been alone in her grief. "We match," she said softly. "Two damaged people trying to protect each other." His tail moved once, agreement. The attack came on the 18th day. Elara woke before dawn to the sound of howling, not the wolves outside her door. These howls came from the forest, coordinated and deliberate, a hunting call. She rolled from bed and grabbed her knife, heart hammering. Through the window she saw the 12 white wolves on their feet, no longer in guard formation but battle lines, facing the forest where shadows moved between the trees. 8 shapes emerged. They were wolves, but wrong, corrupted. Their fur was matted and stained, their eyes glowing sickly yellow, and they wore torn remnants of uniforms, Shadow Guard uniforms. These were not rogues, these were fallen brothers. The corrupted attacked with military precision, 4 from the front, 4 flanking through the trees. Coordinated assault meant to overwhelm through numbers and surprise. But the white wolves were ready. What followed was brutal. Elara pressed against the window, unable to look away. The white wolves fought differently against these enemies. No restraint, no mercy. These corrupted had been warriors once, brothers in arms. Now they were weapons turned against everything they had sworn to protect. The golden-eyed wolf led the center defense. He moved with savage efficiency, teeth and claws finding vital targets. Beside him, the blue-eyed female fought with equal ferocity. Elara recognized the scarred male scout engaging 2 corrupted simultaneously, his movements pure violence. But 8 against 12 should have been overwhelming odds. The corrupted fought with unnatural strength, yellow eyes blazing with dark magic. They did not tire, did not slow. One of the white wolves went down, a massive corrupted latched onto his throat. Others swarmed to protect their fallen packmate, and the formation wavered. Elara saw the gap open. 2 corrupted broke through the line, charging directly toward her cabin. She did not think. 8 years of combat training overrode fear. She grabbed the old service rifle from above the door, checked the chamber out of pure muscle memory, and threw open the door. The first corrupted leaped for her porch. Elara fired. The rifle's kick against her shoulder was familiar as breathing, and her aim was true. The corrupted took the round in the chest and went down hard, yelping. The second corrupted changed trajectory mid-leap, coming at her from the side. No time to chamber another round. Elara reversed the rifle and swung it like a club, connecting with the creature's skull. It staggered, but did not fall. Then the golden-eyed wolf was there, slamming into the corrupted with the force of an avalanche. They went down in a tangle of fur and teeth. Elara scrambled back, but her foot caught on the threshold. She fell hard, landing on her side. Pain exploded through her abdomen, sharp and wrong. The world narrowed to that pain. She heard sounds of battle continuing, felt hands lifting her. No, not hands. Jaws. Gentle despite their size, closing on the back of her cloak and dragging her inside the cabin. The blue-eyed female wolf pulled her to safety, then released her and returned to the fight. Elara curled around her belly, trying to assess damage. Had she injured the baby? Was this a contraction? The pain was fading, but fear remained. She pressed both hands to the small swell and felt for movement. Please, please let everything be all right. Warmth spread beneath her palms. Not the warmth of flesh, something else. Golden light seeped between her fingers, painting the dim cabin in amber glow. The light spread, intensifying, until it blazed bright enough to hurt her eyes. Power. Raw and untamed. Healing power flooding from her hands without conscious direction. She felt it pouring into the child, checking, assuring, protecting. And in that connection, she felt response. The baby was alive, unhurt, reaching back with its own spark of awareness. The light exploded outward from her body in a wave. It passed through this cabin walls like they were not there, washed over the clearing in a golden tide, and everywhere it touched corruption, fire ignited. The corrupted shifters shrieked. The yellow glow in their eyes burned away, replaced by clarity and agony. 3 collapsed immediately, freed from dark magic but too damaged to survive. The others fled into the forest, howling in pain and confusion. The white wolves stood frozen, staring at the cabin where golden light still radiated from every crack and window. Slowly, the glow faded. Alara slumped against the wall, exhausted beyond anything she had ever experienced. Her hands still tingled with residual power. The door opened. The golden-eyed wolf entered, moving slowly, cautiously. Blood matted his white fur. Deep wounds marked his shoulders and flanks, but he came to her, nudging her hands with his muzzle, checking her for injury with anxious whines. "I am all right." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "The baby is all right. What just happened?" But she knew. Aldrich had told her. Moonborn power. Awakening. She placed her glowing hands on the wolf's worst wounds. The light flared again, less intense but still potent. Flesh knit together beneath her touch. Blood stopped flowing. Within seconds, the wounds closed to pink scars, then faded to nothing. The wolf stared at her with something like awe. Outside, she heard the others gathering, the sound of paws on wood as they climbed onto her porch. She looked toward the door and saw them there. All 12, injured to varying degrees, watching her with identical expressions of wonder and hope. Alara understood what they needed. "Come inside, all of you." They filed in, filling her small cabin with massive white bodies. She moved among them, placing her hands on wounds, letting the strange power flow. It felt right, natural, as if some part of her had always known how to do this, just waiting for permission to act. When the last wolf was healed, she collapsed onto her bed, consciousness slipping. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was the golden-eyed wolf curling his body around hers, protecting even in her sleep, as he had from the beginning. As he would, she suspected, until the curse broke or death took him. She woke hours later to find him still there, keeping vigil. Their eyes met in the dim afternoon light, and for the first time, Alara admitted to herself what her heart had been whispering since that first dawn. This wolf was hers. King or not, cursed or free, he belonged to her as much as she was beginning to belong to him. The bond between them was real. Everything else they would figure out together. Outside, winter wind howled through the wraith marches. But inside the cabin, surrounded by 12 white wolves who had become her pack, Alara Ashwood felt the first stirring of something she had not known in 8 long years. Hope. End of Part 1. The Shadowguard's Oath. Part 2. The Breaking. The days after the corrupted attack blurred together in a haze of discovery and growing connection. Alara's moonborn power, once awakened, refused to sleep again. It hummed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat, responding to need and emotion in ways she did not yet fully understand. The wolves had changed too. Or perhaps she simply saw them differently now. They were not guards assigned to duty. They were warriors choosing to stand between her and darkness day after day, despite the curse that imprisoned them. 3 weeks had passed since that golden explosion of healing light. 3 weeks of learning to read their body language, their positioning, the subtle communications that flowed between packmates who had fought together for years. 3 weeks of the baby growing inside her, now strong enough that she felt distinct kicks and rolls, and 3 weeks of falling deeper into connection with a wolf who might be a king. Morning found her outside the cabin, teaching them something new. The 12 sat in formation before her, attention absolute. She had drawn symbols in the dirt with a stick. Circle for gather, line for formation, X for danger, triangle for all clear. Military hand signals adapted for wolves who could not speak. Now she demonstrated, fingers moving through the sequence she had used during the wars. Advance, hold, flank left, rally point. The golden-eyed wolf watched intently, then rose and moved through the corresponding actions. When she signed advance, he took 3 deliberate steps forward. Hold, and he froze mid-stride. Flank left, and he angled his body toward the tree line. Perfect understanding without a single word spoken. The others learned quickly. Within an hour, they responded to her signals as smoothly as they had once responded to their king's verbal commands. She could see the relief in their postures. Communication restored, even if limited. A bridge between her human world and their enforced animal state. "You already knew military signs," Alara said, moving among them to check their positions, "which means whoever trained you understood that silence might be necessary in combat. Special operations, black missions where sound discipline meant survival." The scarred male wolf, the one who always took point, met her eyes and dipped his head once. Confirmation. These were not just elite guards, they were specialists. the kind of soldiers sent when failure was not acceptable and witnesses were not desired. "What kind of king builds a guard like this?" she asked aloud, though she expected no answer. "What threats require this level of skill?" The golden-eyed wolf came to sit beside her, close enough now that she could lean against his shoulder without hesitation. She did, feeling his warmth seep into her bones. The morning was cold, but his presence made it bearable. "I think about that night," she said quietly. "The festival. How you moved through the crowd like you were trying to be invisible. How you chose the darkest corner of the tavern. How you flinched when someone called you sir, as if the title was armor you wanted to shed. You were running from something, or towards something. Maybe both." The wolf turned his massive head to look at her. Those golden eyes held such depth of feeling that her breath caught. Longing, regret, desperate wish to explain what words could not convey. "I wish I had asked your name." Her hand found the thick fur of his neck, fingers tangling there. "I wish I had been brave enough to say stay. Maybe if I had, you would not have gone back to whatever waited. Maybe the curse would never have been cast." He made a sound low in his throat, not quite a whine, something more complex. She felt through their touch what he could not say, that he had wanted to stay, that duty had pulled him away at dawn, that he had planned to return, to court her properly, to offer everything, and someone had made sure he could not. The sound of hoofbeats interrupted her thoughts. All 12 wolves surged to their feet, positioning themselves between Alara and the approaching rider. But their postures relaxed when they recognized the blue-eyed female wolf trotting into the clearing with old Aldrich on her back. The healer had returned every few days since that first visit, bringing supplies and information from the wider world. Now he dismounted with a grunt, his joints protesting the long ride, but his eyes were sharp as ever as he surveyed the scene. "You have been teaching them signals." His voice carried approval. "Smart. Communication is the foundation of any effective unit." "We had a good teacher in the army." Alara gestured to the symbols in the dirt. "You said you were researching the curse. Have you learned anything new?" Aldrich's expression grew grave. He pulled a worn leather journal from his satchel and opened it to pages covered in cramped handwriting and sketch diagrams. "I have been consulting sources that predate the kingdom itself. This curse is old magic, Alara, the kind that requires 3 conditions to break. You have already fulfilled one." "Which one?" "Recognition. You see the man inside the wolf. You know who he is, what he means to you. That is the first test." "And the others?" "The second is acceptance. The cursed one's mate must claim the bond publicly and willingly, before witnesses, with full knowledge of what that bond entails." Aldrich looked at her steadily. "You would become Luna Queen, responsible for the well-being of every soul in Lunaria, target of every enemy the crown has made, mother to the next ruler. That burden must be chosen freely, not because magic compels it." "I understand. What is the third condition?" "That one is more complex. The king must make an ultimate sacrifice. He must choose his mate over something of equal or greater value to his sense of duty." Aldrich closed the journal. "The curse is testing whether the bond is genuine or simply convenient, whether he would truly put you first, even when every instinct of kingship demands otherwise." Alara looked at the golden-eyed wolf. He sat utterly still, listening to every word. "How do we create that situation? How do we force the choice? We do not. The situation will arise naturally. These curses have a way of engineering their own tests." Aldrich's voice dropped. "But there is something else you must know. I have confirmed the identity of the one who cast this curse. His name is Theron Greymark. He serves as High Chancellor of the Royal Council." The name meant nothing to Alara. Who is he? He was King Kael's father's best friend, served as advisor and mentor to both the old king and the current one. But he has become disillusioned with monarchy itself. Aldrich produced another document, this one a printed pamphlet. This has been circulating in the capital for months. Theron's manifesto calling for the dissolution of the monarchy and establishment of a council republic. Alara took the pamphlet, scanning the dense text. It was articulate, passionate, and disturbingly logical in its arguments. Monarchy concentrates power in one bloodline. History shows that even good kings make catastrophic mistakes. The old king died trying to stop corruption he himself had inadvertently enabled through poor oversight. Why should millions of lives rest on the judgment of one man, however well-intentioned? He wants to end the royal line. she said slowly. Not out of personal ambition, but because he genuinely believes it is the right thing to do, which makes him far more dangerous than a simple power seeker. Aldrich retrieved the pamphlet. Theron loved the old king like a brother, watched him bleed out from wounds inflicted by enemies using corrupted shifters. That trauma broke something in him. He decided the system itself was at fault, not just the individuals within it. And the corruption magic? The same kind that killed King Kael's father? The same, which creates a terrible irony. Theron uses the very weapons he claims to oppose because he views them as necessary tools for change. Aldrich's expression was haunted. I knew him once, long ago. He was a good man, brilliant, compassionate, but grief and ideology have twisted him into something monstrous. The golden-eyed wolf growled, low and continuous. Alara felt fury radiating from him. This was personal. Betrayal by a mentor, by someone he had trusted. There is more. Aldrich hesitated, then continued. Your parents, Dorian and Lyria, they were investigating Theron's corruption network when they died. They had gathered evidence proving he was creating controllable weapons from captured shifters. They planned to present their findings to the old king. Theron had them killed 3 days before the scheduled meeting. The words hit like physical blows. Alara's hand moved instinctively to her belly, as if to protect her child from this legacy of violence. My parents were murdered by the same man who cursed Kael, the same man who now wants to kill me and this baby. Yes, because you are Moonborn. You can sense corruption, purify it, undo everything he has built. And because your child represents the continuation of the very bloodline Theron has dedicated himself to ending. Aldrich placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. He will come for you, child. Not with corrupted rogues next time, with something worse. When? Soon. I have sources in the capital who report that Theron has been consolidating power during the king's absence. Half the council now supports his vision of reform. He is building political momentum to declare the monarchy dissolved. But first, he must ensure there can be no heir to rally loyalists, meaning he has to kill my baby before anyone knows it exists. The words hung in this cold air. Around them, the 12 white wolves drew closer, a living wall of protection. But Alara knew walls could be breached by a determined enemy with sufficient resources. What do we do? She asked. We prepare. Aldrich began unpacking his satchel, producing weapons Alara recognized from her army days. Tactical knives, compact crossbow, vials of substances she knew were lethal to shifters. And we wait for Theron to show his hand. He will set a trap. He must, because frontal assault has already failed. Our task is to recognize the trap and turn it against him. How will we know? He will use leverage, something you cannot ignore, something that forces you to come to him. Aldrich met her eyes. Who matters to you, Alara? Who could he threaten that would pull you from this fortified position? The answer came immediately. Mira, her friend in the village, the only person from her old life who still visited, who still cared. Then we must warn her. Aldrich mounted the blue-eyed wolf again. I will ride to the village today, place her under guard, perhaps bring her here where she can be properly protected. He departed within the hour, leaving Alara alone with the wolves and her spinning thoughts. She tried to lose herself in routine, gathering herbs, mixing medicines, checking supplies, but her mind kept returning to Theron Greymark, a man who had loved a king and now destroyed that king's legacy out of twisted mercy, a man who used the same corruption magic he claimed to oppose, a man who would kill an unborn child to achieve his vision of a better world. That kind of enemy was the most dangerous, not evil for evil's sake, but convinced of his own righteousness. The golden-eyed wolf found her in the herb garden, staring at nothing. He pressed his shoulder against her legs, a gentle reminder of his presence. She sank down to sit beside him, leaning into his warmth. You knew him, she said softly. Theron. He trained you, maybe, advised you, and now he has stolen your voice and your form because you wanted to claim a mate he deemed dangerous to his plans. The wolf's entire body trembled with suppressed rage. I am sorry. Sorry that someone you trusted betrayed you. Sorry that trying to choose happiness led to this. She wrapped both arms around his neck, burying her face in his fur. If I had known that night what it would cost you, I would never have let you touch me. He pulled back sharply, forcing her to look at him. His golden eyes blazed with intensity. She felt his thoughts pressing against hers through the strange connection they shared. No, Never regret. Worth it. Worth everything. Tears spilled down her cheeks. How can you say that? You have been trapped for weeks. Unable to speak, unable to rule, unable to even tell me who you are. All because you spent one night with me. He pressed his forehead to hers, a gesture so human it broke her heart. Through their touch, she felt his certainty. That night had been the first time in years he had felt like a man rather than a symbol. The first time someone had looked at him and seen just him, not the crown he wore. Worth any price. You are either the bravest man I have ever met, or the most foolish, she whispered. Possibly both. His tail moved once. Agreement, perhaps, or simple acknowledgement that bravery and foolishness often looked identical from the outside. They sat together until the sun reached its zenith, woman and wolf, bound by something that had no proper name. Not quite love yet, but something deeper than simple attraction. Recognition of matching wounds, understanding between those who had both lost too much and found unexpected hope in the wreckage. 3 days passed with no word from Aldrich. Alara tried not to worry, but anxiety gnawed at her. The village was only half a day's ride. He should have returned by now. On the 4th day, a rider appeared, but it was not Aldrich. The young man who burst into the clearing was no older than 20, his face pale with terror. He rode a horse nearly dead from exhaustion, foam flecking its mouth. The wolves surrounded him instantly, but Alara called them off when she saw his desperation. "Are you Alara Ashwood?" the young man gasped. "Yes, what has happened?" "My name is Marcus. I serve at the royal garrison." He slid from his horse, legs barely holding him. "There has been an attack. At the village. Your friend Mira. She has been taken." Alara's blood turned to ice. "Taken where?" "To the old mill, 5 miles north of here. They say if you want her returned alive, you must come alone by nightfall." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. They left this. Alara took the note with trembling hands. The handwriting was elegant, educated, the message short. "Alara Ashwood, your friend suffers needlessly. Come to the old mill at dusk, alone. Or I will demonstrate exactly how much pain a body can endure before death provides mercy. You have until sunset. A concerned citizen." No signature, but the tone was unmistakable. Theron's arrogance masked as courtesy. "It is a trap," Marcus said urgently. "I was ordered to deliver this message, but I swear I did not know what it contained until the captain explained. They used me as an unwitting courier. The man who orchestrated this, he has been corrupting guards for months, turning them into weapons with dark magic. I barely escaped with my sanity intact." He pushed up his sleeve, revealing crude symbols carved into his flesh, still raw and weeping. "I resisted the corruption. It nearly killed me, but I held on. When I heard what they planned for you, I stole a horse and rode straight here. You cannot go to that mill. It is a death trap. I have to go. Mira is my friend, the only one I have left." "Then you need backup." Marcus straightened despite his exhaustion. "I am trained. I can fight. And I know the mill's layout. There are ways in besides the main entrance." The golden-eyed wolf moved to stand directly in front of Alara. His meaning was clear. She was not going anywhere without the full might of the Shadow Guard. She met those fierce golden eyes and made a decision. "We do not walk into his trap. We spring a trap of our own." She looked at Marcus. "Can you draw me a map of the mill and surrounding terrain?" "Yes." The young man produced paper and charcoal, sketching quickly. "The mill sits on the river bend. Main building here, water wheel here, forest coverage on 3 sides, open ground to the south." Alara studied the map, her military training reasserting itself. "We have 12 wolves, 1 guardsman, and a pregnant healer." "Against what number?" Marcus's face was grim. "I counted 20 corrupted guards when I left the garrison. Theron has been building this force for months, maybe longer. 20 trained soldiers enhanced by dark magic against 13. Poor odds by any measure. But Alara had fought in worse circumstances during the wars. She knelt and began drawing in the dirt. The wolves gathered close, watching. Marcus crouched beside her, following her logic. "We split forces. 4 wolves visible with me as bait. That is what Theron expects. 1 foolish woman with minimal protection." She sketched positions. The other 8 hide here and here in the forest on either side. When the corrupted engage the bait group, the hidden units flank and surround. "A pincer movement," Marcus said with dawning respect. "Classic hammer and anvil. You have done this before." 6 years of combat experience. Alara looked at the golden-eyed wolf. "You commanded these warriors. You know their strengths. I need you to identify who goes where. Who are your best ambush specialists? Who can hold a position under sustained assault? The wolf studied her drawing, then began using his muzzle to move rocks into position on her dirt map. 1 rock for each wolf. He pushed 4 to the bait position, including himself. The remaining 8 split evenly between flanking positions. The blue-eyed female led one flank, the scarred male led the other. Perfect tactical thinking. These positions gave overlapping fields of fire while maintaining concealment until the decisive moment. Marcus, you stay with the flanking group here. She indicated the scarred male's position. You are human. You can operate the crossbow I will give you. Target any corrupted who break through toward Mira's location. Your job is containment, not glory. The young guardsman nodded. Understood. I am not a hero, just a soldier who wants to do the right thing. That makes you more valuable than a dozen glory seekers. Alara checked the sun's position. We have 3 hours until dusk. We move in 2. That gives us time to scout and position the flanking elements. Questions? What about the moonborn power? Marcus asked carefully. During the last battle, they say you burned away corruption with golden light. Can you do that again? I do not know. Alara placed a hand on her belly. It happened instinctively when the baby was threatened. I have no idea how to summon it deliberately. Then we plan as if you cannot. The scarred male wolf seemed to communicate through posture. Better to be surprised by success than failure. Agreed. Alara stood, her decision made. Theron wants me to walk into his trap alone and afraid. Instead, he gets a combat veteran with an elite guard and a tactical plan. Let us see how his corruption magic fares against coordinated military action. The wolves moved immediately into preparation mode. Those assigned to bait positions stayed close to Alara. Those designated for flanking melted into the forest to scout their assigned positions. Within minutes, the clearing was empty except for Alara, Marcus, and the golden-eyed wolf. You should be with the flanking elements, Alara told the wolf. You are the most powerful fighter. You belong where you can do the most damage. He sat immovable before her. His meaning was transparent. Where she went, he went. No negotiation. Stubborn. She could not quite suppress a smile despite the fear coiling in her gut. Just like every other military commander I ever served under. Fine. But when this goes wrong, do not say I did not try to position you optimally. His tail swept once, acknowledgement and complete dismissal of her concern. They departed the cabin as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Alara wore her old tactical vest over thick clothing, knives at her belt and boot. The weight was familiar, comforting. She had not carried weapons like this since Matthias died, had not expected to ever need them again. But war had found her anyway, as war always did. The journey to the old mill took 90 minutes of careful movement through forest and across open ground. The flanking elements moved ahead, invisible in the trees. Marcus split off to take his assigned position. That left Alara with 4 white wolves in loose formation around her. The golden-eyed wolf walked at her right hand, close enough that she felt his warmth, far enough that he had room to maneuver if violence came. The other 3 maintained tactical spacing, eyes scanning constantly for threats. As they approached the mill, Alara saw exactly what Marcus had described. Old stone building beside a river, water wheel frozen in winter ice, forest coverage on 3 sides, open ground to the south where grain wagons would have brought harvest in better times. And standing in that open ground, illuminated by the dying sun, was a figure in scholar's robes. Older man, silver hair, sad eyes. Theron Greymark looked nothing like a villain. He looked like someone's disappointed grandfather. Behind him, 20 wolves with yellow glowing eyes stood in perfect formation. And tied to a post near the mill entrance, Mira struggled against her bonds, mouth gagged, but eyes wild with terror when she saw Alara approaching. Alara Ashwood. Theron's voice carried across the space between them. Cultured. Weary. You came. I confess I am surprised. Most would choose self-preservation over friendship. Most have not spent 6 years watching friends die in war. Alara stopped 30 paces away, her wolves arrayed before her. Release Mira. She has nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with this. She is leverage, proof that you care about something beyond yourself. Theron took a step forward. The corrupted wolves behind him moved in perfect synchronization. You see, I needed to understand you. The report said you were a hermit, isolated, caring for nothing and no one. But that did not match the woman who had captured King Kael's interest. So you kidnapped my friend to test me. I gave you a choice. Come alone and face death, or abandon someone you claim to value. You chose poorly. Theron's expression held genuine regret. I take no pleasure in this, you must believe me. But the child you carry cannot be allowed to live. It represents everything wrong with inherited power. Another generation of concentrated authority, another chance for catastrophic failure. You murdered my parents for investigating corruption. Now you use that same corruption as a weapon. Alara kept her voice steady despite rage burning through her veins. You have become exactly what you claim to fight against. Necessary evil. Theron spread his hands as if explaining to a slow student. The old king was my dearest friend. I watched him die from corruption he could not contain. The system killed him, not just the enemies who wielded the magic. I will dismantle that system, even if I must employ the very tools it enabled. By killing an unborn child. By preventing a future tyrant. That child will inherit both moonborn power and alpha dominance. Do you understand what that combination represents? The ability to command absolute loyalty while healing any resistance. The perfect dictator. I am trying to save Lunaria from a future where your child rules as an unchallengeable god king. Or she might rule with wisdom and compassion. You are killing possibilities, not certainties. History suggests otherwise. Theron's voice hardened. I am sorry, Alara. Truly. But this ends tonight. You, the child, and King Kael's hope for a dynasty. The council will declare the monarchy dissolved. Lunaria will become a republic. And my old friend's dream will finally die as it should have long ago. He raised one hand. The 20 corrupted wolves tensed, ready to charge on his signal. Alara scratched her ear, the signal for flank. Theron's hand dropped. Everything happened simultaneously. The corrupted wolves charged forward in a disciplined rush. The 4 white wolves before Alara met them head-on, violence erupting in a tangle of teeth and claws. And from the forests on either side, 8 more white wolves exploded into the open ground. Theron's face went from confident to shocked in the span of a heartbeat. Ambush, the one thing he had not prepared for. The flanking elements hit the corrupted from 2 sides simultaneously, classic pincer movement executed with flawless precision. The 20 corrupted suddenly found themselves engaged from 3 directions, their formation collapsing into chaos. Marcus emerged from cover, crossbow raised, and put a bolt through the throat of a corrupted wolf charging toward Mira's position. The creature went down, and Marcus was already reloading, his hands steady despite fear. Alara ran for the mill entrance where Mira struggled against her bonds. 2 corrupted broke through the melee, charging to intercept. The golden-eyed wolf slammed into the first with bone-crushing force, driving it into the frozen ground. The second leaped for Alara's throat. She dropped and rolled, coming up with knife in hand. The corrupted twisted midair, trying to follow. She drove the blade up into its belly as it descended, using its own momentum against it. Hot blood sprayed her face and the creature collapsed, thrashing. Alara reached Mira and cut her bonds with quick, efficient slashes. Her friend ripped the gag away, gasping. What in the moon goddess's name is happening? War. Same as always. Alara pulled Mira toward the mill building, seeking cover. Stay down. Do not run. The wolves know you are friendly, but they are fighting on instinct right now. Behind them, the battle raged with brutal intensity. The 12 white wolves fought with perfect coordination against enemies who had numbers, but lacked true unit cohesion. Corrupted wolves fought as individuals enhanced by magic, but the Shadow Guard fought as a team forged by years of shared combat. The difference was telling. Within minutes, 6 corrupted lay dead or dying. 8 more fled into the forest, unable to bear the coordinated assault. That left 6 still fighting, and Theron standing alone in the open ground, his confidence crumbling. The golden-eyed wolf broke away from combat and stalked toward the Chancellor. Blood stained his white fur. His golden eyes burned with fury that transcended his animal form. Every step radiated lethal intent. Theron stumbled backward. Wait, Kael, wait. I did this for you. For your father's memory. For everything we believed in. The wolf kept advancing. Theron tripped, fell on his back, scrambled in the dirt. The wolf placed one massive paw on his chest, pinning him. Jaws opened, revealing teeth designed to tear flesh from bone. But he did not strike. He held Theron there, helpless, waiting. For what, Alara realized? For me. She walked across this battlefield, stepping over bodies, while the fighting continued around her. Mira called her name, frightened, but she did not stop. She had to see Theron's face, had to look into the eyes of the man who had killed her parents and tried to kill her child. The Chancellor stared up at her from beneath the wolf's paw. He looked old suddenly, tired, a man who had spent everything on a cause he genuinely believed in, only to watch it crumble. "You could have talked to Kael," Alara said quietly. "Presented your concerns about monarchy, worked within the system to reform it. Instead, you murdered and corrupted and cursed. You became the very evil you claimed to oppose." "I am not evil." Theron's voice was hoarse. "I am trying to prevent future evil. Can you not see the difference? Evil rarely sees itself clearly." Alara knelt beside him. "My parents died trying to expose corruption. You killed them because they threatened your plans. How many others have died for your vision of a better world? Sacrifices, all of them, necessary sacrifices. You murdered your friend's mate, cursed him to silence, tried to kill his heir." Alara's voice was ice. "That is not sacrifice. That is betrayal, and you will answer for it." "To whom? A council that supports me? A kingdom that wants reform? There is no justice here, only competing visions of the future. Justice comes in many forms." She stood, looking down at him. "Kael could kill you now, tear out your throat and be done with it. But he is waiting for my word, because he understands something you never did. True strength is knowing when not to use power." The golden-eyed wolf met her gaze. She felt his question through their bond. What did she want? Vengeance or mercy? Around them, the last of the corrupted fled. The battlefield fell silent, except for the labored breathing of wounded warriors. Marcus appeared from the tree line, crossbow at ready, checking for remaining threats. The 12 white wolves reformed their protective circle, but now they watched Alara with something new in their eyes. Respect, recognition that she had led them into battle and brought them out victorious. She looked at Theron, this old man who had twisted grief into ideology and ideology into atrocity. He was waiting for her to pronounce judgment. King Kael was waiting for her command. The entire Shadow Guard was waiting to see what kind of Luna Queen she would become. Alara made her choice. "We take him to the capital, alive. Let him face trial before the full council. Let every noble hear his confession under Truthwater. Let the kingdom decide his fate through law, not vengeance." Theron's eyes widened. "You would give me trial, after everything? I would give you what you tried to deny others, justice through established order." She glanced at Marcus. "Can you bind him? Ensure he cannot work magic?" The young guardsman moved forward immediately, producing chains from his pack. "These are inscribed with warding runes. No magic can be cast while wearing them." They bound Theron's hands and ankles. He did not resist, just stared at Alara with something like wonder. "You are not what I expected." "Good." Alara turned away from him. "Expectations are what got you into this situation." She went to Mira, who had emerged from the mill building on shaking legs. Her friend grabbed her in a fierce embrace. "You fought like a soldier. I had no idea you still had that in you." "I hoped I did not. But life keeps demanding it." Alara held her friend close, feeling the tremors of fading adrenaline. "Are you hurt?" "Bruised and terrified, but alive thanks to you." Mira pulled back, looking at the wolves surrounding them. "Are you going to explain why you have an entire pack of massive white wolves following you around?" "They are not a pack. They are the Shadow Guard, and the one with golden eyes is King Kael Blackthorn, cursed to wolf form." Alara said it simply, too exhausted for elaborate explanation. "Also, I am pregnant with his child, and apparently destined to be Luna Queen. It has been a complicated month." Mira stared at her, then started laughing, high and slightly hysterical. "Of course you are. Why would anything in your life be simple?" "Why indeed?" Alara looked at the golden-eyed wolf. He sat watching her, blood on his muzzle, exhaustion pulling at his massive frame. But his eyes held something new, pride, and perhaps the beginning of something deeper. She walked to him and knelt in the frozen dirt. Around them, the Shadow Guard watched. Mira watched. Marcus watched. Even Theron, bound and defeated, watched. Witnesses. Aldrich had said the second condition required public claiming before witnesses. Alara placed both hands on the wolf's face, looking into those golden eyes she knew better than her own reflection now. "I see you, Kael Blackthorn. Not just the king, not just the wolf. The man who spent 18 weeks protecting a woman he barely knew. the warrior who trained soldiers to value discipline over domination, the leader who lets a pregnant healer command his elite guard in battle because he trusts her judgment. She felt power building, not moonborn healing light, something else, something that tasted of moon silver and ancient promises. You could have sent others. You came yourself. You could have abandoned me when the curse made protection inconvenient. You stayed. You could have taken Theron's throat just now. You waited for my word. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. That is not duty. That is partnership. That is what I want. What I choose. The wolf trembled beneath her touch. I claim you as my true mate. Before these witnesses, before the moon goddess, before whatever destiny waits beyond this moment. Not because magic compels me, because you have earned my trust, my respect, and my heart. She felt tears on her cheeks. I accept the bond willingly. I accept queenship. I accept the child we made and the future we will build. All of it. I choose all of it. She kissed the space between his eyes. I choose you. The world exploded in light, golden from her, silver from the bond forming between them. The two colors merged, spiraling upward in a column that reached toward the darkening sky. Power poured through Alara in waves, but this time she did not fight it. She let it flow, let it build, let it complete what had been started that night at the Harvest Festival. The wolf beneath her hands convulsed. She held on, refusing to let go, as his body began the transformation. It was not gentle. Bones cracked audibly as they reshaped. Fur receded in patches, leaving raw skin that immediately toughened into human flesh. Limbs lengthened and reconfigured, paws becoming hands and feet. The process took nearly 2 minutes, far longer than a normal shift. Years of curse fighting against release, making every second agony. But finally a man knelt before her where the wolf had been. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair silver-streaked at the temples, beard neatly trimmed despite weeks in wolf form, scars mapping a warrior's life across his chest and arms, and golden eyes, brilliant and burning with emotion too vast for words. K.L. Blackthorn, Alpha King of Lunaria, her mate, father of her child. His first words in 18 weeks came out as a ragged whisper. Alara, my Alara, you did it. You broke the curse. His voice was deeper than she remembered from that one night, rougher from disuse, but the tone was exactly as it had been when he whispered promises in darkness, when he said he would find his way back to her. He had, despite everything, through curse and corruption and attempted murder. He had found his way back. She cupped his face in her hands, studying every scar and line. You came for me. That first morning when I woke to wolves at my door, that was you choosing me over the safety of hiding. That was you making the sacrifice. I would make it again. Every time. Without hesitation. His hands covered hers. I have been trying to tell you for weeks. Everything I felt. Everything I wanted. The words were trapped behind teeth and tongue that could not shape them. Do you know how maddening it has been, watching you discover your strength? Seeing you lead my guard into battle, feeling the baby move inside you, and not being able to speak? Then speak now. Tell me everything. Around them, she heard gasps. The other 11 wolves were transforming, the curse's hold broken for all of them simultaneously. Warriors emerged from animal forms, human again after months of imprisonment. But Alara had eyes only for Kael. He stood, drawing her up with him, and pulled her against his chest. His arms wrapped around her, careful of her pregnant belly, holding her as if she might disappear if he loosened his grip. I love you, he said into her hair. I loved you from the first moment I saw you dancing at that festival. You laughed at something your friend said, and I knew you were mine. The mate bond snapped into place so hard, I thought my heart would stop. I thought it was just attraction, just loneliness seeking connection. It was destiny. The moon goddess herself chose us for each other. He pulled back to look at her. But you were right. Destiny is not enough. We had to choose each other. Build trust through action. Prove the bond was real. And we did. We did. Kael's hands moved to her belly, settling over the swell with reverence. Our child. Our future. The reason Theron feared us so much. Alara covered his hands with hers. Their child moved beneath their joined touch, as if recognizing its father's presence for the first time. The moment felt sacred despite the battlefield surrounding them, life affirming itself in the midst of death's handiwork. A voice interrupted the moment. Your Majesty. Rowan, the Shadow Guard's second commander, approached. No longer a wolf, but a scarred man in his late 30s with ice-blue eyes. The clearing is secure. Casualties? None on our side. The corrupted who fled into the forest will need to be hunted down eventually, but they pose no immediate threat. And Theron? Bound and awaiting your judgment. Rowan glanced at Alara. The Luna Queen commanded well. Her tactical planning saved lives today. Kael's arms tightened around Alara. She always was a warrior, even when she tried to pretend otherwise. They gathered in the growing darkness. 12 Shadow Guard now in human form, weapons drawn from hidden caches. Marcus standing proud despite his injuries, Mira clinging to Alara's hand, and Theron, bound and broken, watching his plans crumble. "We ride for Shadowspire Citadel at dawn," Kael announced. His voice carried command that made even hardened warriors stand straighter. Theron Greymark will face trial before the full council. Every crime will be documented, every victim named. Justice will be served through law. He looked at Alara. "My Luna has shown us the way." Mercy tempered with accountability. "That is the kind of rule she will bring to the throne, and I will be proud to stand beside her." "Assuming I survive childbirth," Alara muttered. "I am only 26 weeks along and already exhausted constantly. How do people do this?" "You will have an entire kingdom's support." Kael kissed her forehead. "Healers, guards, every resource we possess. You will not face this alone." "Promise?" "Promise." They made camp in the mill building, posting watches through the night. Alara slept curled against Kael's chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. Around them, the Shadow Guard kept vigil, as they had for 18 long weeks. But now they did so as humans, free from the curse that had bound them, ready to face whatever came next with their king restored and their new queen accepted. In the darkness, Theron lay awake and stared at the ceiling. He had gambled everything on a vision of a better world, and lost. But as he watched Kael and Alara sleeping in each other's arms, he wondered if perhaps he had not lost entirely. If perhaps his corruption had served one purpose. It had forged a queen who understood both mercy and strength, a king who had learned to sacrifice, a bond tested by fire and proven true. Maybe that was worth the price after all. End of Part 2, The Shadow Guard's Oath, Part 3, Crown of Light. Dawn broke cold and clear over the Wraith marches. Alara woke to the sound of horses being saddled and warriors checking weapons. For a moment, caught in that space between sleep and awareness, she forgot where she was, forgot the curse breaking and the battle and the claiming that had changed everything. Then she felt the warm weight of Kael's arm around her waist, his hand resting protectively over her belly, and memory flooded back. She was no longer a widow hiding in the borderlands. She was Luna, Queen of Lunaria, carrying the heir to the throne, about to ride into a capital where half the council wanted to dissolve the monarchy her child represented. No pressure at all. Kael stirred beside her, his golden eyes opening to meet hers. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, relearning faces in daylight, confirming that last night had been real, not some fever dream born of desperation and hope. "Morning, Luna Queen." His voice still carried that roughness from weeks of disuse, but warmth colored every syllable. "How does it feel to wake up as royalty?" "Terrifying." Alara shifted to face him fully, wincing as her back protested. "Also, I am 26 weeks pregnant and slept on a stone floor. I feel approximately 100 years old. Then we should get you on a horse and to the capital where you can sleep in an actual bed." Kael sat up, his scarred chest catching morning light through the mill's broken windows. "Though I should warn you, the bed comes with a throne and approximately 10,000 responsibilities." "Can I decline?" "Too late. You claimed me before witnesses. The bond is sealed." He leaned down to kiss her forehead. "You are stuck with me and all the complications I bring. I seem to recall you being stuck in wolf form for 18 weeks because you wanted to be with me. I think I can handle some political complications." Outside, Rowan called out that horses were ready. The journey to Shadowspire Citadel would take 3 days of hard riding normally, 3 days to prepare for whatever awaited them at the capital. 3 days before Alara would have to become the queen her people needed. But as they prepared to depart, a messenger arrived, muddy, exhausted, his horse nearly dead from being ridden too hard. He fell from his saddle directly at Kael's feet. "Your Majesty." His voice was hoarse. "The council. They plan to vote at dawn, 3 days hence. To dissolve the monarchy, Chancellor Theron's supporters have the numbers. 3 days, the exact time it would take them to reach Shadowspire by normal travel. Kael's jaw tightened. They are trying to force the issue before I can return. Create a fait accompli that cannot be easily reversed. What do we do? Alara asked, though she already knew the answer. We ride through the nights. Reach the capital by dawn the day after tomorrow instead of in 3 days. Catch the council before they can vote. His expression was grim. It will be hard on the horses. Harder on you in your condition. I can handle it. Alara met his eyes. This is not the first time I have had to push beyond comfortable limits. It will not be the last. You should not have to. The frustration in his voice was palpable. You should be resting, preparing for childbirth, not riding through darkness to stop a political coup. Yet here we are. She stood, ignoring the protests from her body. When have either of our lives been what they should be? We work with what is, not what ought to be. They departed within the hour. 14 horses for 14 riders. 12 Shadow Guard in human form, weapons visible now, armor retrieved from hidden caches that had been positioned years ago throughout the kingdom for exactly this kind of emergency. Marcus, the young guardsman who had proven his loyalty, rode with quiet pride despite injuries still healing. Mira, still shaken but determined to see this through, stayed close to Alara. And Theron, bound and silent, rode between 2 guards who watched him with expressions mixing betrayal and something that might have been pity. Kael led them north along paths only he and his guards seemed to know. Forest trails that avoided main roads where they might be seen and reported. River crossings marked by ancient stones that predated the kingdom itself. This was a king who knew his land intimately, who had walked its borders and learned its secrets during years of patrol. Alara rode beside him, her horse a steady mare chosen specifically for gentleness with pregnant riders. Every so often, Kael would glance over, his eyes checking that she was managing the pace. She appreciated his concern, even as it chafed slightly. She had ridden through worse conditions during the wars, but she had not been 6 months pregnant then, had not carried the weight of 2 lives instead of 1. The baby seemed to enjoy the movement at first, rolling and kicking with increased vigor. Alara placed a hand over the swell, feeling her child's energy. Moonborn power hummed beneath her skin, responding to the life growing inside her. She could sense the baby's well-being with certainty now. Strong, healthy, developing faster than normal human pregnancies, but still within safe parameters. For now, you are thinking too hard. Kael's voice pulled her from internal monitoring. I can see it in your face, the worry lines between your eyebrows, the way you keep touching your belly as if checking that everything is still all right. I am thinking about arriving at the capital, meeting a council where half the members support Theron's vision of change, convincing them that monarchy should continue when I am not entirely certain they are wrong about its fundamental flaws. He was right about some things. Kael's admission surprised her. The old system did have problems, power too concentrated, oversight insufficient, too much resting on one person's wisdom or folly. But his solution was worse than the disease he diagnosed. You cannot build a better world on foundations of murder and corruption. So what do we do? How do we prove that kingship can evolve without being dissolved entirely? We show them. Kael's hand moved to cover hers where it rested on her belly. You will be the proof they need. A queen who leads warriors despite never training for command, who chooses mercy over vengeance even when vengeance would be easier and more satisfying, who understands that true strength means knowing when to share power rather than hoard it. Those are my actions, not yours. Exactly. Which is why you will be the better ruler. His smile held no bitterness, only pride. I inherited a crown simply by being born to the right bloodline. You earned respect through choices made under pressure. The council will see that difference. Some of them, at least. The first day passed in steady riding. They stopped only briefly to rest the horses and eat from supplies carried in saddlebags. Hard bread, dried meat, water from streams they crossed. Alara felt exhaustion pulling at her with each passing hour, but moonborn power helped. It flooded her body with energy that natural reserves did not possess, letting her push beyond normal human limits. But even magic had limits, and pregnancy demanded resources the power could not fully replace. As twilight approached, Kael called halt in a clearing that showed signs of regular use by the Shadow Guard. Fire pits already dug, lean-tos constructed from previous stops, caches of supplies hidden in marked trees. This was a patrol route they had maintained for years, keeping watch over kingdom borders far from the capital's notice. They made camp quickly, with the efficiency of people who had done this countless times before. Rowan assigned watch rotations. Sable, her dark skin gleaming in firelight and the facial scar she wore like a badge of honor, visible now she was human again, checked weapons and armor for damage from the day's ride. The scarred male wolf from Part 1, now revealed as a grizzled warrior missing his left ear from some long-ago battle, scouted the perimeter. Alara found herself watching them work, seeing the brotherhood Aldrich had mentioned. These were not just soldiers following orders. They were family, bound by choice and shared experience into something unbreakable. Mira settled beside her, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders against the evening chill. So, Queen. That is quite the promotion from hermit healer hiding in the borderlands. I have not fully processed it yet. The words felt inadequate for the magnitude of change. Yesterday I was mixing herbs in my cabin. Today I am responsible for an entire kingdom's future. You always were good in crisis, though. Mira's voice held the warmth of long friendship. Remember Hill 347, when the supply lines got cut and we had 50 wounded with no morphine? You kept everyone alive through sheer force of will and creative use of local plants that should not have worked but somehow did. That was different. That was medicine. Applying knowledge to save lives. Leadership is medicine, just on a larger scale. You diagnose problems, prescribe solutions, and manage expectations when outcomes are uncertain. Her friend squeezed her hand. You have been training for this your whole life. You just called it something else. Kael joined them, carrying bowls of stew one of the guards had prepared over the fire. He settled on Alara's other side, close enough that their shoulders touched. Your friend speaks wisdom. Leadership and healing use the same fundamental skills. Pattern recognition, calm under pressure, ability to make difficult choices when all options are bad. She usually does speak wisdom. It is deeply annoying. Alara accepted the bowl gratefully, suddenly aware she had eaten almost nothing all day. Thank you. For the food, and for not treating me like fragile cargo that might shatter at any moment. You charged into battle yesterday while 26 weeks pregnant. I think we have established you are the opposite of fragile, but I reserve the right to worry anyway. It is part of the bond. They ate in comfortable silence while the fire crackled and stars emerged overhead. Around them, the Shadow Guard moved through evening routines, checking horses, sharpening blades, the quiet sounds of warriors at rest between hard days. Theron sat apart, still bound but no longer guarded quite so closely. He stared into the fire with empty eyes. A man watching everything he believed in turn to ash before him. Alara felt an unexpected pang of something that might have been pity. He had lost someone he loved, the old king, and twisted that grief into ideology that justified atrocity. It was a path she recognized. After Matthias died, she had retreated into isolation rather than face a world that continued without him. Given different circumstances, different choices, she might have turned her pain into something equally destructive. You are thinking about him. Kael followed her gaze to where Theron sat, wondering if he deserves mercy or judgment, wondering if anyone is ever beyond redemption, or if we are all just making choices with the information and pain we carry. She leaned into Kael's warmth. He loved your father. That love broke something in him when the old king died in ways he could not prevent. My father loved him too, like a brother. Kael's voice was heavy. They served together for 30 years, advised each other, protected each other. That bond made the betrayal worse. Not just political treason, but personal betrayal of someone who trusted absolutely. What would your father want you to do? Justice. But justice tempered with understanding of how grief can poison even the best intentions. Kael was quiet for a long moment. My father believed that good kings must sometimes make terrible choices, that mercy and punishment are not opposites but tools to be used appropriately. Theron will face execution for his crimes, but his reforms will be heard, his concerns addressed. Perhaps that is the mercy my father would want. They fell silent, the weight of coming decisions heavy between them. Tomorrow they would ride through another night. The day after, they would reach Shadowspire and face a council divided. And somewhere in the midst of political chaos, Elara would have to give birth to an heir the kingdom was not certain it wanted. Simple, no complications at all. That night, as Elara lay wrapped in blankets beside Kael, beneath stars that seemed impossibly distant, she felt the first true warning. A tightening across her abdomen that was more than the baby moving. Not quite pain, more like pressure. The sensation of something settling, preparing. Too soon. She was only 26 weeks along. The baby needed more time to develop. But high alpha bloodline plus moonborn power meant accelerated development. What should take 9 months might take only 6. Her body was not rejecting the child. It was racing toward birth at supernatural speed. Elara said nothing. They had to reach the capital first. Had to secure the throne before the heir was born. She would hold on. She had to. The second day brought them out of wilderness and into more populated territory. Villages appeared every few miles. Farmland stretched in careful plots between forests. People working fields looked up as the royal party passed, their expressions shifting from curiosity to shock as they recognized the Shadow Guard uniforms and the king they thought dead. News of Kael's return would spread through the kingdom now like wildfire. By the time they reached Shadowspire, half of Lunaria would know the curse was broken, and the king rode home with a mate none of them had expected. The other half would be preparing resistance. They stopped briefly at midday in a town large enough to have an inn, fresh horses needed, supplies replenished, and Elara needed a few minutes off horseback before her body simply gave out. Kael lifted her from her saddle, his hands careful on her swollen belly. She stood on shaking legs while the world spun slightly. "You need real rest." Kael's voice was tight with worry. "More than a few minutes. We do not have time. The council votes tomorrow at dawn. We are still half a day from Shadowspire, even riding through tonight." She gripped his arm for balance. "I can rest when we get there, when the throne is secure, when our child's future is certain." "You are as stubborn as you are brave, and both qualities are going to drive me to early madness." "Good. You need someone to keep you on your toes." She managed a smile despite exhaustion. Kings who are too comfortable make poor decisions. They rode out within the hour, pushing toward the capital as the sun reached its zenith and began its descent toward evening. Elara felt contractions beginning in earnest now. Not frequent, not yet unbearable, but undeniable. The baby was coming, and nothing would stop it. "Just a little longer," she whispered to her belly. "Hold on just a little longer. We are almost there." The baby kicked in response. Whether agreement or protest, she could not tell. Kael's eyes were on her constantly now. He knew. Through their mate bond, he felt every tightening of her womb, every spike of discomfort she tried to hide. His anguish bled through their connection. A man torn between duty to reach the capital and desperate need to stop and keep his mate safe from the consequences of this mad ride. "We keep going." She met his eyes without flinching. "The council votes at dawn. If we are not there, monarchy falls. Our child becomes heir to nothing. So we ride." "You could lose the baby." His voice broke on the words. "Then we lose it. But we do not lose the kingdom." She reached across the space between their horses to touch his hand. "This child is heir to the throne. If the throne dissolves before birth, what future does it have anyway?" "We ride, Kael. We ride because we must." The agony in his expression nearly broke her resolve. This was his ultimate sacrifice, not choosing her over Theron at the mill. This, trusting her assessment over his protective instincts, allowing her to make choices he feared would destroy her. He nodded once. "But the moment you say stop, we stop. No arguments." "Agreed." They rode through the second night, pushing horses to their limits, but not beyond. The Shadow Guard knew how to demand speed without breaking their mounts. They rotated horses at staging posts, using fresh animals kept specifically for emergency rides like this one. Elara clung to her saddle and refused to complain, even when every bounce sent jolts through her pregnant body. The baby rolled and kicked in protest. She sent soothing thoughts through their connection. "Just a little longer. Please, we are almost there. Your father and I, we are fighting for your future. Hold on." The contractions increased in frequency as night deepened. Every hour, then every 40 minutes. Elara breathed through them, using techniques learned during her medical training. Labor was just another kind of crisis. Approach it systematically. Do not panic. Trust the process. But the process was happening too fast, and they were still hours from the capital. Dawn of the third day found them cresting the final hill as the sun broke free of the horizon. Below, spread across the valley like a jewel of black stone and iron, lay Shadowspire Citadel. Towers reaching toward pale morning sky, walls that had never fallen to siege in 300 years of kingdom history, the heart of Lunaria. And today, possibly the site of monarchy's end or its transformation. Alara felt another contraction, stronger than any before. She gripped her saddle horn and bit back a cry. They were so close, just a few more hours. She could hold on for a few more hours. Kale was beside her instantly, steadying her horse. His face was white. "We need to stop. Now. You are in active labor." "We are 2 miles from the citadel, 2 miles from the council chamber." She met his eyes through tears of pain and determination. "I can make it 2 miles. This is insane. This is necessary." She straightened as the contraction passed. "Ride, my king, before I change my mind." They rode through gates that swung open at the sight of the Shadow Guard. Citizens were just beginning morning routines when their king returned from the dead. The sight spread through streets like lightning through dry kindling. People emerged from homes and shops, staring in shock and wonder. "He lives. The king lives. The returned king." The whispers became shouts, became a roar of welcome and confusion. But Kyle did not stop to acknowledge the crowds. He rode straight for the citadel's central keep, where the council chamber lay. Behind him, the Shadow Guard maintained perfect formation. Alara rode at his side, her face pale, but her back straight and her head high. If she was going to become queen, she would at least look like one, even if she was about to give birth in a council chamber. They dismounted in the courtyard as bells began to ring. Emergency summons for the council. The king's return demanded immediate assembly. Theron, still bound, was pulled from his horse and handed over to loyal guards who had remained faithful through weeks of uncertainty. "Take him to the holding cells." Kale's command was ice. "He will face trial this day. Justice will be served before the sun sets." Alara's legs nearly gave out when her feet hit stone. Kyle caught her, his arm around her waist. His eyes asked a silent question she saw clearly despite no words. "I can do this." Her voice was stronger than she felt. "A few more hours. That is all I need. Just let me finish this before our child arrives." They entered the citadel to controlled chaos. Nobles and officials ran through corridors, some celebrating the king's return, others pale with shock at plans suddenly disrupted. Theron's supporters were easy to identify. They moved like men whose carefully laid schemes had just collapsed around them. The council chamber was circular, with a massive table carved from a single enormous tree that legend said had been a gift from the moon goddess herself. Seats for 20 counselors, each representing a different region or interest of the kingdom. Half were already present when Kale swept through the heavy doors. The rest arrived within minutes, summoned by bells and rumor that spread faster than wildfire. Kyle took his place at the head of the table, the seat that had been empty for 18 weeks. Alara stood beside him, acutely aware that she wore travel-stained clothing and probably smelled of horse and road dust and fear. Not exactly the dignified entrance she had imagined for meeting the kingdom's ruling council. But dignity came in many forms. She had led warriors into battle 2 days ago. She had ridden through 2 nights despite pregnancy complications that would have stopped most women. She had earned her place here through action, not pretty dresses and courtly manners. Another contraction hit. Alara gripped the back of Kale's chair, breathing carefully through it. No one seemed to notice. All eyes were on the king who had returned from the dead. "The council will come to order." Kale's voice filled the chamber with absolute authority that brooked no argument. "I return from 18 weeks of magical imprisonment to find my kingdom on the verge of dissolution. Someone will explain to me why treason against the crown has been allowed to flourish in my absence." A silver-haired nobleman rose, his expensive robes marking him as high-born and influential. "Your Majesty, I am Lord Cassius, acting head of council during your regrettable absence. We believed you dead or permanently incapacitated. Chancellor Theron advised that we must ensure stability through transition to council rule. He said it was what you would have wanted, what the kingdom needed. Theron is a traitor who will face trial for murder, corruption, and conspiracy against the crown." Kyle gestured, and guards brought the bound man into the chamber. "This man cursed me to silence. Murdered my first Luna, Adelina, ordered the assassination of Dorian and Lyria Ashwood for investigating his use of forbidden magic, and attempted multiple times to kill the woman who carries my heir." Gasps rippled through the council. All eyes turned to Alara, taking in her pregnant belly for the first time. Some looked calculating, weighing advantages. Others showed genuine shock. A few appeared openly hostile, as if her presence was a personal insult. Alara felt her water break, warm liquid suddenly soaking through her riding pants, running down her legs, pooling on the polished marble floor beneath her feet. Not now, not yet. She had to finish this first, had to see justice done before she became a mother. Kale's head whipped toward her. He saw the wetness spreading across the floor, saw her face go white as bone. "No, keep going." Her voice was barely a whisper only he could hear. "Finish the trial. I can hold on. I have to." "You cannot. This is too much." He moved toward her, but she stopped him with a raised hand. "I am a combat medic. I know my body better than anyone." She straightened, despite another contraction building. "Do your duty, my king. Let me do mine." The room had gone absolutely silent. Every counselor staring at the Luna Queen, whose water had just broken in the middle of the kingdom's most important political chamber. Alara addressed them directly, her voice carrying despite pain. "Before this child is born, before I become a mother, you will witness truth. Theron Greymark will answer for his crimes under oath of truth water, and you will decide whether monarchy deserves to continue or should die with the old king's failed dreams." She met each counselor's eyes in turn. "My child will inherit this kingdom if you allow the throne to stand. I want it to be a kingdom worth inheriting, one where power is checked, where dissent is heard, where even a king must answer to law." Lord Cassius found his voice, though it shook slightly. "You would hold trial now, while you are actively in labor? I would see justice done before I bring new life into this world." Her voice carried steel forged in 6 years of war. "I will not let my child be born into uncertainty. So yes, Lord Cassius, we hold trial now." Kale looked at her with something between awe and terror. Then he nodded. "Bring the truth water. We do this according to ancient law." Aldrich appeared from the side entrance as if summoned. The old healer carried the crystal vessel, its contents glowing with silver light. His eyes widened when he saw Alara's condition, saw the wetness on the floor. "Child, you should be in the birthing chamber immediately. Active labor with twins is not something to delay." "Twins?" Alara's voice was faint. "You never said twins." "I only just confirmed it through deep scanning this morning when I felt your arrival through the bond with Kyle." Aldrich's expression was grave. "Which makes this even more urgent. Please let us get you to safety." After the trial, she swayed but stayed upright. Justice first, then birth. The truth. Water ritual was ancient, predating the kingdom itself. Sacred magic that compelled honesty from even the most skilled liar. Aldrich poured the glowing liquid into a ceremonial cup carved with symbols of the moon goddess. All 20 counselors bore witness as Theron was forced to his knees and the cup brought to his lips. "Drink." Aldrich's command was gentle but absolute. "Speak truth, Theron Greymark, for your king, for your kingdom, for the friend you lost." Theron drank. Silver light spread through his veins, visible beneath skin gone suddenly translucent. His eyes went unfocused, pupils dilating until almost no iris remained. When he spoke, words poured out without any filter of will or self-preservation. The questions came in ritual order. "Did you curse King Kale Blackthorn to wolf form?" "Yes, I cursed him the night he announced his intention to claim Alara Ashwood as mate." "Why?" "Because she is moonborn. Her child would unite 2 of the most powerful bloodlines in history. That child would be unchallengeable, a perfect dictator. I sought to prevent future tyranny." "Did you murder Luna Adelina 3 years past?" "Yes. She discovered my research into corruption magic. She found proof of my experiments creating controllable weapons from captured rogues. She would have exposed my work before I completed the network needed for change." "Did you order the deaths of Dorian and Lyria Ashwood?" "Yes. They investigated the same corruption. They gathered evidence that would have ended my plans and sent me to execution. I had them killed 3 days before their scheduled testimony before the old king." Alara felt a contraction that nearly drove her to her knees. She gripped the table edge, breathing through it. Kale stood beside her, close enough to catch her if she fell, but respecting her demand to see this through to completion. The questions continued. "Did you attempt to kill Alara Ashwood and the heir she carries?" "Yes, multiple times. I sent corrupted rogues. I set the trap at the old mill. The Moonborn must not birth royal children. The bloodline must end for the kingdom to be free of inherited tyranny. Why do you believe monarchy must end? Kael's voice was rough with emotion. Theron's response came without hesitation or artifice. Because I watched your father, my dearest friend, die from corruption he could not stop. The system killed him. Good man, wise king, loving brother to me. But the throne concentrated too much power in his hands. When he failed to oversee his generals properly, when he trusted the wrong advisors, thousands died in wars that should never have been fought. I loved him. That love convinced me the institution itself is poison, no matter how good the individual ruler might be. What reforms did you seek? Elected advisors with real binding power, not decorative titles. Mandatory council approval for any declaration of war. Independent oversight of royal finances by scholars with no court connections. Limitations on succession to prevent incompetent heirs inheriting absolute power through accident of birth. Distribution of authority across multiple bodies to prevent catastrophic single-point failure when one person makes a mistake. The council chamber erupted in urgent discussion. Some councilors nodded slowly, seeing merit in the concerns, if not the methods. Others looked conflicted, torn between horror at the murders and recognition that Theron's diagnoses held truth. A few seemed ready to support monarchy's dissolution on principle alone. Alara felt her knees buckle. Kael caught her before she fell, his arm around her waist the only thing keeping her upright. Enough. You have done enough. You are going to the birthing chamber now, even if I have to carry you. Not yet. She forced herself to stand straighter. Let me speak first. Through pain that threatened to split her apart, Alara addressed the council. These are reasonable concerns that Theron raises. She looked directly at the gathered nobles. He murdered to achieve his vision, killed innocents including my parents. That cannot and will not be forgiven. But good ideas remain good regardless of their evil source. She turned to Kael. Implement his reforms, all of them. Prove that monarchy can evolve, can listen, can become better than what it was. You would reward his treason with change? Lord Cassius sounded incredulous. I would honor the people he killed by fixing what broke them. My parents died trying to expose corruption. Let their deaths mean something more than tragedy. She gripped Kael's arm as another massive contraction hit. Let monarchy prove it can change, or let it fall knowing it refused to adapt when given the chance. The baby was coming, now, no more delaying. Kael swept her into his arms without asking permission. I call vote now. All in favor of implementing Chancellor Theron's reforms, signal your support. Hands rose slowly around the table. 1, 3, 5, 8, 12. A clear majority but not unanimous. The reforms are adopted effective immediately. Kael's voice rang with finality as he carried Alara toward the door. Theron Greymark, you are sentenced to execution at sunset this day for multiple counts of murder and high treason. But your vision for reform will live in the changes we enact. Your death will mean something beyond simple vengeance. Theron looked at Kael with tears streaming down his weathered face. Thank you for hearing what I tried to say through all the blood. Your father would be proud of the king you have become. He deserved better from both of us. Kael's voice was rough. Guards, take him to prepare for execution. Ensure he has food, water, and a priest if he desires one. They moved through corridors at speed, Aldrich ahead of them clearing the path, guards behind them keeping onlookers back. Alara felt consciousness slipping, the world narrowing to waves of pain, and Kael's arms holding her steady. The birthing chamber was prepared, as if Aldrich had known this would happen. Healers waited, supplies ready. Alara was placed on a bed, her soaked clothing cut away, clean linens covering her. Kael stood beside the bed, gripping her hand. His face was white as bone. I am staying. I do not care what you say. I am not leaving you to face this alone. You have to go. Aldrich's voice was flat, no room for argument. Alpha power and moonborn birth create feedback that causes hemorrhaging. I have seen it before. Your presence will kill her and the babies both. This is not negotiation. This is medical fact. No. Kael's voice broke. I will not leave her in pain. Alara squeezed his hand with all her remaining strength. Our children need you alive. They need their father. Go. She pulled his face down to hers, kissing him hard. I trust Aldrich. I trust the healers. I trust myself to bring our babies into this world. Now go before I lose my courage." The agony in his face nearly shattered her resolve, but he stepped back, released her hand, turned toward the door where Rowan waited, his ice-blue eyes sympathetic, and the missing ear from some long-ago battle making his weathered face even more fierce. Sable stood beside him, her dark skin gleaming with concern, and the facial scar she wore like a badge of honor visible in the lamplight. Right outside, Kael's final words: "If anything goes wrong, I am coming in. Laws and medical necessity be damned." The door closed. Alara was alone with healers and the overwhelming imperative to push. Labor was brutal in ways her medical training had not fully prepared her to experience firsthand. Hours that felt like years, waves of pain that threatened to drown consciousness. But between contractions, she used every scrap of moonborn power she possessed, checking the baby's positions, guiding their descent, ensuring safe passage through a body that had not been designed for twins. Golden light flared with each push, illuminating the chamber like continuous lightning. The healers worked around the radiance, trusting that her power would not harm them. Outside the door, Kael paced like a caged animal, roared his frustration, tried repeatedly to force entry. Each time, the Shadow Guard held him back. They understood, even if he could not, that sometimes the best way to protect someone was to let them fight their own battle. He felt every contraction through their mate bond, experienced phantom echoes of her pain. It was torture worse than any curse. In the courtyard far below, Theron was led to the execution block. The timing was coincidence. No one had planned it. But it became symbolic. As Alara fought to bring new life into the world, the old order faced its ending. The first baby crowned. Aldrich's steady voice guided her. "Push now. Give everything you have." Alara screamed and pushed with strength she did not know she still possessed. The executioner's axe fell in the courtyard. A baby's wail split the air in the birthing chamber. Theron's head separated from his body. New life, old death, the kingdom pivoting on its axis between past and future. "A girl." The lead healer's voice was jubilant with relief. "You have a daughter, Your Majesty." Aldrich placed the tiny infant on Alara's chest. She was impossibly small, born weeks early but breathing strongly, red-faced from the journey, screaming her arrival into the world. But her eyes, when they opened, blazed pure gold like her father's. "Hello, little one." Alara touched her daughter's face with trembling fingers. "I am your mother. Welcome to the world we fought so hard to keep for you." Then another massive contraction. The healers had barely seconds to prepare. The second baby came faster. 10 more minutes of pushing that felt eternal and instant at once. Then a boy slid free into waiting hands, red hair already visible like his mother's. He did not cry immediately, and Alara's heart clenched with sudden terror. But then he gasped, coughed, released a wail that matched his sister's impressive volume. "Twins." Aldrich's voice carried wonder. "A boy and a girl. The kingdom has not seen royal twins in 200 years. He placed the boy on Alara's chest beside his sister. Both babies now cleaned and wrapped, they looked impossibly fragile against her body. But their eyes, when they blinked open, showed fierce awareness beyond what newborns should possess. Seraphine and Calum. The names came to her fully formed, as if the babies themselves had chosen them. She will be fire. He will be sky. Together they will transform everything. The door burst open. Kael stood there, having finally fought free of restraint. His eyes found Alara first, checking that she lived, then dropped to the 2 tiny forms on her chest. He made a sound that was half sob, half laugh, fell to his knees beside the bed as if his legs could no longer hold him. "Twins!" His voice broke on the word. "We have twins! Seraphine and Calum Blackthorn." Alara shifted so he could see both babies clearly. Heirs to a throne that just chose evolution over extinction. Born into a kingdom that will be better because we demanded it change. Kael reached out with shaking hands, touching each tiny head with infinite gentleness. "They are perfect. You are perfect. All of this is perfect." His golden eyes found hers. "You did this. You brought them safely into the world while I paced outside like a useless fool. You brought us safely to the capital through 2 nights of hard riding. You broke a curse to protect us." She touched his face. "This is our victory. Together." Through the windows, bells began to ring. Not alarm bells this time. Celebration bells. the news of royal twins spreading through Shadowspire like dawn light chasing darkness. In the courtyard below, Theron's body was carried away, his execution complete, his reforms living on as testament that even villains could contribute to progress through unintended consequences. Alara slept with her children on her chest and her mate's hand covering them all. Exhausted, triumphant, complete. 6 months later, autumn transformed the gardens of Shadowspire Citadel into a tapestry of gold and crimson. Alara sat on a blanket under an ancient oak, watching Seraphine concentrate fiercely on levitating a wooden block. The toy wobbled, then floated in an unsteady circle around the baby's head before dropping. Seraphine clapped with delight at her own magic. Beside her, Calum reached for a wilted flower someone had left on the blanket. His tiny fingers brushed the brown petals. They straightened, bloomed, turned vibrant red. The baby giggled at the transformation he had created. Both children showing power at 6 months. Unprecedented. Exactly what Theron had feared, and exactly what the kingdom now celebrated. Kael held both twins, making ridiculous faces that sent them into peals of laughter. Around the garden, the Shadow Guard lounged in various states of relaxation. Marcus taught sword forms to young recruits drawn from commoner families for the first time in kingdom history. Another reform implemented. Mira visited weekly, bringing news from villages and reminders of simpler times before crowns and thrones complicated everything. Aldrich maintained rooms in the Citadel, serving as both chief healer and grandfather figure to twins who adored him. Alara's academy trained 70 students now. The corruption Theron had spread was being systematically cleansed from the kingdom. The council reforms had proven so popular that even former skeptics admitted the evolved monarchy functioned better than pure kingship ever had. This was not the life Alara had imagined when 12 white wolves first appeared outside her cabin, but it was the life she had built through choice and sacrifice and stubborn refusal to let fear dictate her future. Seraphine grabbed a fistful of her mother's hair. Calum grabbed the other side. Both babies giggled as Alara yelped in surprise and mock outrage. Kael rescued her from tiny grasping hands, and the Shadow Guard laughed at their queen's predicament. In that moment, surrounded by family forged through crisis and choice, Alara understood the deepest truth. She had not just survived the journey from widow to queen. She had thrived, had transformed, had become someone she never knew she could be. The wolves had come at dawn 18 weeks ago, silent guardians of a future no one could have predicted. They had kept their oath through curse and combat, through birth and bloodshed. And now, in gardens filled with autumn light and children's laughter, that oath continued. Not as duty, as family. The end.